Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to build a simple Flask app that will allow you to upload files to S3 and also save some metadata about those files as well to the database. So let me go ahead and show you what we're going to build today. It's a simple upload form, and then I can select this PDF file, for example, click upload. And what it's going to do is it's going to save it to my database. It's going to generate a new file name and it's going to put it on S3 with that file name. So I can go ahead and refresh my bucket here and we see that the same file is there. So 093, I can click on it and it will download and I can open it and basically see what's in it. So that's what I want to do in this video. Of course, I can upload other files, but the point is everything I upload here will end up on S3 and also save a reference to it basically in my database. And I'll show you how to do that all in this video. But before I get started, I just want to say that if you need one-on-one help with your app, so like you're working on uploading files to S3, or you're doing anything else in Flask or even any general Python web app or JavaScript, stuff like that, I can help you. I have my coaching program. You can go to prettyprinted.com/coaching, or you can just click on the link in the description below and you can learn more about the coaching program and how I can help you in a one-on-one situation so you can get past any issues that you have in your app instead of spending so much time trying to figure out something that you don't quite have the experience with yet. So with that, let's get into creating this example app. To get started, the first thing I'll do is install a couple of things here. So first I'll install Flask and then I'll install something called Boto 3. So Boto 3 will allow us to connect to the Amazon AWS API and actually upload files to our bucket. And now that I have those things installed, let me go over to the AWS dashboard. And the first thing you need are some credentials. So with AWS, there are multiple ways of setting that up. I'm not going to cover it in this video. Instead, I'll link this down in the description below. And you can just follow the instructions here to create access keys for you. And you're going to end up putting them in a file on your file system that AWS is automatically going to read from. So on my computer, it's .aws/credentials. But if you're using Windows, it may be somewhere else. So once you've done that and you have your access key set up, so make sure you do that before you go on because you can't do anything beyond that point. You want to go to S3. So S3 is a service that we're going to use to upload things, of course. And when the page loads, I can go ahead and create a bucket. So I'll just go over here and create bucket. I already have 3, but I'll create another one. So I'll call this Flask S3 example as the bucket name. I'll use the region that's already selected. And what I want to do is I'm going to make mine public. So I'm going to uncheck this and I'm going to do another step after this. But of course, you don't have to make your bucket public. This is just for demonstration purposes. So I'll click that and I don't think I have to add anything else. So I'll click create bucket. Okay, so now that I have this, I'll click on Flask S3 example. And this part you don't have to do if you don't want your bucket to be public. I'll go over to permissions and then I will edit the bucket settings here. And actually, no, it's not bucket settings, it's the bucket policy. So I'm just going to copy something into this. So I click edit and then I can copy and paste this. So basically, this will allow all of the objects in my bucket to be public. So now I can save changes and then that's it. So once again, you don't have to do that if you don't want your buckets to be public, but I want mine to be public for the purposes of this video. Okay, so now let's go back over to VS Code and let's start writing the code. I will create a file called app.py and I'll just put everything in here to keep it simple. And I'll start by importing Flask from Flask. And then I'll create the create app function, instantiate Flask. So Flask under name, and then return app. And then I just remembered I need to install another library. It's going to be Flask SQL Alchemy. So let me go ahead and install that as well. And I'll set that up here. So I'll say from Flask underscore SQL Alchemy, import the SQL Alchemy class. I can instantiate it here because I'm doing it in one file. I'll instantiate it outside of the create app function, and then I'll initialize it inside. So db equals SQL Alchemy. And then in here, I can do db init app. And for this to work, I need some kind of database configuration. So this will be a SQL Alchemy database URI. And then I need to specify, in my case, it's going to be SQLite db.sqlite3, like I always do in my videos. Okay, so when this is created, it's going to be created in the instance directory, which is a newer thing in Flask, but the point is it's going to be in my file system. So now let me go ahead and create a model. So this will be class, and then I'll call this file. So the idea here is I will keep track of everything that I upload. So like all SQL Alchemy models, I need an ID. So db column, db integer for this, and then this will be the primary key. And then I'll store some things. So how about storing the original file name? So I'm going to change the file name when I do this. So db string, and let's say 100. And then the new file name. So I'll just call this file name. So db column, db string 100, just to keep it simple. And then I'll also keep track of the bucket and the region that the file is in. So bucket is equal to db column db string. Once again, this can just be 100, even though it won't be nearly that long. And then finally, the region that the bucket is in. So I'll put that there. So of course, you could have any metadata that you want in this model here, but for my purposes, I just want the original file name and the bucket and the region that the file is going to be in. So let's go ahead and create this in the database. So I'll just start up Flask shell. And I forgot to pass app to init app, so don't forget that. So I'll do Flask shell again, and then db.create all. And now I have this instance directory, and it should have my database file in there, so db.sqlite3. So that's exactly what I want. I can verify that my table is in there. So .tables, and we see file. If I do .schema, we see everything is in the schema that I defined in the model here. So now let's focus on the more interesting part. Let's work on the parts of the app that we'll actually use. So I'll define my routes at the bottom of this create app here. So what I'll do is app routes slash, and then this is going to be the place where the users can upload. So it will be get and posts for this. Of course, you can separate them out if you want. I'll call this index, and I'm going to return a template called index.html. And let me go ahead and create that template. So I'll create a folder called templates. And inside, it's going to be index.html. And I'll just paste in the HTML instead of writing it here. So just to show you what this looks like, I have a header here that says upload to S3. And then I have a simple form that just has a file input and an upload button. And then finally, I have this loop that's going to loop over the files that I have in my database and basically display the original file name. And then this really should be a dash, so I'll make that a dash. And then a link to the file on S3. So it's just building the URL for S3 by using the bucket name, the region, and the file name. And then it displays the file name for the link text. So I can save this and go back. And actually, one thing to say before I go back, anytime you're uploading files, make sure you have this encoding type multi-part form data. Otherwise, it won't upload your files properly. So just make sure you have that. So now I'll close the template and I'll go back to my index here, and let me create the if statement for the post request. So I'm going to work on the get method first, but I just want to put this if statement here. So if request.method is post, and that should have a closing quote, I'm going to return redirect URL for index. So I'm just going to come right back to the same place using a redirect. So I need to import redirect and URL for. So now inside of the index, I want to focus on the get case. So that's going to be everything outside of this if block. So the first thing I want to do is I want to query for all the files that I have in the database. So I can say files equals file.query.all, and I can pass that to my template. So files equals files. So that's going to be here when I loop over the files. And then that should be it for the get case. So all I have to do is just get the files and send them to the template, and that should be enough. So now let's go back up to the post and think about what needs to be done. So I'm going to be uploading some files, and I'm going to process those files and basically send them to S3. So the file will be uploaded to my Flask app first, something will happen. Basically, I'm going to create a new file name and then I'm going to send all that over to S3. So one of the things I want to do is I want to limit the files that can be uploaded. So I'm going to use the trick from the Flask documentation. So what I can do is I can create a constant called allowed extensions. And this is a set. And it's basically the extensions that you want to allow to be uploaded to your app. So in my case, I'll allow text files, PDF files, and PNG files. But of course, this can be anything that you want. But for now, I'll just have these three. And then also, I want to create a function that will basically determine if the file that was uploaded has a file name that is allowed. So of course, this is in checking the actual binary data of the file. So if someone names their file like whatever.txt, but it's actually like an executable file like inside with the binary data, this isn't going to catch that. So this is just a simple file extension check. If you wanted to have more checks, you could, but for the purpose of this video, it's going to be pretty simple. So I'm going to create a function called allowed file, and this comes from the Flask docs, takes in a file name, and basically I'm going to return either true or false depending on if the following is true or not. So first it's going to check to see if there's a dot inside of the file name. So if dot in file name, and we're going to look at the right hand side of the dot. So I can split R split, and I'm looking for one thing. So I just want to split on the last dot starting from the right. And I want to get the right hand side of that, right? So it's going to split on the dot. The left hand side will be the file name and the right hand side will be the extension. So the right hand side will be 1 in this case. And then I want to lower that to make sure that it's all lowercase. And I want to check to see if it's in my allowed extension set. So the function is pretty simple. So if it's basically one of these three files, it's allowed. If not, then it is not allowed. So now what I can do is I can go back down to my routes and I can first get the uploaded file. So I'll say uploaded file equals, and then this is going to be request.files. I'll need to import requests in a moment. And I think it's called file to save. Let me see if that's the name in the template. Yeah, so file to save is the name of the file input. And I just need to name it the same thing here for request.files. And then I can say if not allowed file, and then I need to pass in the file name. So this is going to be uploaded file.file name. I'm just going to return file not allowed. Okay, so I won't do anything further with that. Let me go ahead and import request. And since I'm up here, I also want to import Boto 3. So Boto 3 is a thing that I installed. And let me just double check to make sure it's installed. Yeah, it's already there. So I'm importing Boto 3, and this is what I'm going to use to actually connect to S3 and send the file over. So to use this, I can go down back into my route. And after this check for the file to see if it's allowed or not, I can start by getting the resource that I need from Boto 3. So as you know, AWS has a bunch of services that are available, and S3 is just one of them. Boto 3 allows you to interface with multiple services on AWS, but I only care about S3. So the way that I can do that is I can use Boto3.resource, and then here as a string, I pass in the resource that I'm interested in. So I'm interested in the S3 resource. So I can name this S3 as a variable, and then I can use this variable to actually do things in S3. So let me write the code to actually send the file over to S3 first, and then I'll go back and add all the stuff that I need before that. So what I want to do is I want to use S3 and then bucket. So what I need to do here is I need to pass in a bucket name. So what I'll do is I'll just pass in a variable called bucket name that I'll create in a moment. And then I can do upload underscore file object. And then what I want to do is I want to pass the uploaded file. So uploaded file, right? So that's this. This is the file object that comes from request.files. This upload file object is going to call the .read method on this upload file so it can get the actual data. And then the second argument that I could pass is the file name that I want on S3. So I'll just have another variable called new file name because like I said before, I'm going to change the file name. So before this S3 stuff, what I'll do is I'll give my bucket name. So bucket name equals, and then Flask S3 example. And then above this, what I want to do is I want to get the new file name. So new file name. And basically what I want is I want a file name that is unique and no one can upload like the same file name again. So I need to generate this file name. And what I can do to generate that is I can use a UUID. So I believe UUID stands for Universally Unique ID. And the idea is when you call this, it's going to give you a number that is, for all practical purposes, unique, right? So theoretically, you can have collisions, but practically speaking, the space of numbers is so large that you're not going to end up with a duplicate. So to use this, I'm going to use the module that I'm importing from, and then UUID, actually UUID 4, and then .hex, right? So this method here is the important one. It's going to generate the unique number for me. It's a hexadecimal number, so it's going to have like A through F in it as well. It's going to generate the number for me, and then .hex will just generate like the string version of it. And then what I want to do is I want to append the same file extension that the file has. So what I can do is I can do plus dot, and then I'm going to do plus uploaded file dot file name dot r split. So the same thing that I'm doing in the allowed file function. So I'm going to split on the dot, and this is starting from the right and then going. So it's looking for the first one starting from the right. And then I'll get the right-hand side of that because it splits on the dot. So the left-hand side will be the file name and the right-hand side is the extension. And then I can just set it to lowercase. Okay, so I have the new file name and I have the bucket name. So this should be enough to test. So let's go ahead and start up the app. And let me turn on debug mode. So export Flask underscore debug equals true. And now I'll run it. And let's go over to the browser and localhost 5000. Okay, so render template is not defined. That's pretty easy to fix. I just need to import it at the top. And now I have my upload form. Okay, so I'll select a file and then I'll upload it. And it brings me back to the same screen. So now let's go here and refresh. Actually, I need to go to objects. I'm still on the permissions tab. So let me go to objects here in my bucket. And I see this file. So it was just uploaded. And this is the file. You see the file name is completely different. And that has to do with the UUID. So now let's work on saving this to the database. So I kind of know which file I uploaded in terms of the original file name. And then I also have a link to S3. So all I have to do is inside of my route here, after the S3 stuff, if that's successful, I'll just create a new file. So I'll say file equals file. I'll instantiate it. So original file name equals uploaded file dot file name. And then the actual file name is going to be new file name. And then I'll have the bucket name. So bucket equals bucket name. And finally, I'll have the region. So the region, I'll just hard code it, but I could have this be a variable as well. It's US East 2. And I'll go ahead and add this to my session. So db.session.add and db session commit. Right, so that should be all I need to save it to the database. So let me go back to my app, refresh, and I'll upload another file. I'll upload the thumbnail for this video. So upload. And then it reloads the page. And because this is a GET request, it's querying the database. I see the flask.png. That's the one I uploaded. I can click on the link here. And then it downloads, and then I can open it, and I see the thumbnail for this video. I can also upload something else. Click upload. And it works. And finally, I'll upload the first thing, the text file, just to make sure it's working. And it should appear, and I see it right there. So that covers all the things I wanted to talk about in this video. I've showed you how to upload things to S3 and then also save some metadata associated with that file that you upload so you can use it in your app if you want to. Or, of course, you can just upload things there and not have any connections to your app. Of course, it depends on exactly what you're trying to accomplish. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.